Marisha here, and today I'm going to share with you my adventures in attending the annual cheese rolling at Cooper's Hill, just outside Gloucester. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with this annual event, I'll give you a brief history of it and then tell you about my experience. So, the annual cheese rolling is what it sounds like. People gather at Cooper's Hill just outside of Gloucester and they roll an 8-pound wheel of double Gloucester cheese down the hill, and a bunch of people run down the hill to chase after it. Ostensibly, they're trying to catch it. That almost never happens. But whoever gets to the bottom of the hill or crosses the finish line first gets to keep the cheese, and they're the winner. And they get interviewed by TV crews and everything. Um, this is something that has been happening annually for people believe 600 years. So we're talking like late Middle Ages. Although the first written documentation that we know of only dates back to 1826. Now, there are a couple of theories of like why this got started or what its origins are. One is that it was some kind of way of claiming property, and another is that it's tied to like pagan festivals celebrating the end of winter and sort of hoping for fertility in the fields, because I think maybe there's evidence of other similar pagan rituals happening where people are throwing foodstuffs down a hill, hoping for like fertility, basically, fertility of the fields. But people don't know 100% how this got started or exactly when it got started. They just know that it's been happening for hundreds of years at this point. Now, the event is super dangerous. It's actually classified as an extreme sport, and that is because the hill is incredibly steep. Um, I on my way there, I toyed with the idea of like, you know what, I might like to like actually like run down the hill, because you don't have to enter or register or anything. You just show up at the top of the hill at noon, ready for the race, and then you can run, right? Like there's no official entry or registration fee or anything. You just show up and run down the hill. Um, and then I realized that I wouldn't be able to do it because I was by myself and I wouldn't have anybody that I could trust to watch my possessions while I was running down the hill. But then also when I got there and I saw just how steep this hill is, it's more like a cliff, really. It's I think like an 18-degree um hill. So I mean it's like, here's like the top of the hill and then like here's the hill. It's like very, very steep. Um, it's only about 200 yards, but that is plenty of time for people to get hurt. Very rarely do people end up running down the hill entirely. They usually end up falling and rolling down the hill. Some people, I think, even strategize of just starting off rolling because they know they're going to anyway, and it's easier to roll intentionally than to trip and fall and roll. There's always injuries. I think almost every year, someone's taken to the hospital with a broken bone or whatever. One year, the woman who won the women's race was knocked unconscious, and when she gained consciousness, that's when she found out that she had won. So my guess is she must have rolled down the hill, got knocked unconscious, and kept rolling down unconscious. So it's a really dangerous thing, and people like the county board or whoever's we used to be in charge of it advises that it's not safe. Now, it used to be part of an official thing. Like there was a governing body and it was an official thing. And then one year, I think it was 2009, 15,000 people showed up. It's a really popular event. And it was way too many people for them to handle. And they were concerned about safety issues. Like, we can't guarantee people's safety because even if you're not running down the hill, if you're close enough to the sidelines, you might get hit by the cheese. And then also just having that many people on this steep hillside, because people are lined up along the sides of the hill at the bottom and crowding out. There's, safety concerns. So they canceled it. But a bunch of people showed up anyway and held it unofficially. And the same thing happened the next year when the organization tried to sell tickets, because it's always been a free event. And so they were going to sell tickets, and that was going to solve the problem of overcrowding, whatever. But I don't know what they were charging, but people blocked. People were like, no way. And sent nasty letters to the organizers. And so the organizers just canceled again, and people held it unofficially again. And it's just been held unofficially ever since, with the exception of 2020 and 2021 when it wasn't held because of COVID. But because it's unofficial, it can be considered a little bit more dangerous because there's not any guarantees that there's medical staff on hand. Now, when I went there, it looked like there already were medical staff on hand, although the ambulances had to be called. Um, and you can see how it can be really dangerous, not just because the hill itself is really steep and you could have issues, but also it's difficult to get emergency vehicles and personnel up to Cooper's Hill, which brings me to my experience of going to this thing. So the races start at noon, and so my plan was to get there, a little bit before noon because I was naive and thought it'd be really easy to get up there and find a place. But the closest I could get with public transportation was to get there at like 11:15. I thought, "Oh, that's fine. I can just read a book or whatever." But I get there and there's already lots of people like heading up this hill. Now, I had a suitcase with me. It wasn't a huge suitcase, it was a carry-on suitcase, but the biggest size that you can get away with as a carry-on suitcase. Because I had trained from London, and from Gloucester, I was going to train up to Birmingham and spend a couple of days there. So I have my suitcase with me and then my backpack. And I'm walking along, and at first you're walking through like this field and it's fine. Then you start going up this hill, and it's kind of a steep hill. And I'm just like, oh man, this is hard with my suitcase. And the sun was out, and I was starting to get a little bit sweaty, and I'm like starting to get a little out of breath. And I get up to this hill, and I'm just like, wait a minute, this isn't the hill. There's more hill. There's like another hill after this hill because I'm following these other people all the way up. So then I'm like going up the second hill, which is even steeper. And I'm like, oh man, I can't wait to get to the top of this hill and I'll be done. And then I did, and it wasn't the end. There was another like it's a really kind of arduous hike, especially if you're carrying a suitcase. And then I finally got to a point where you could see everybody was really clustered together, and I could see like beyond the sea of people the actual hill, which is super steep. I was like, oh, that's what it is. Okay. But I was also upset because I thought there's so many people around already. There's no way I'm going to be able to get a spot where I can actually watch this event. And I had made a big deal about going to this. I was like, yes, I'm going to go to this thing. And I was talking to my British friends about it, and they were kind of laughing at me because they're like, yeah, like nobody does that in like the UK except the locals, right? Like my friends who have lived here their whole lives have never gone to this thing or whatever. And they're just like, it's so Marisha that she would go to this. But so I was like, I have to go to this thing, and it's only once a year, and like, I don't want to wait another year to try to go see this. But I was really bummed out. I was like, I'm not going to be able to find a spot. I felt like Zacchaeus. But the way that it's set up is like, okay, here's the hill, and then there's people along each side and at the bottom. So I was entering from this side, and there's swarms of people, and I could see them up along each side. But I can also see there's a few people who are trying to make their way over here to get up to this side. And I think, okay, maybe this side isn't as crowded because people are coming from over here, and maybe like a lot of people just stopped. So I follow like a few people, and again, I'm trying to push my way through the crowd with my suitcase in hand. and, and I get to this spot where there's like a couple of like men that are by me that are also trying to do what I'm doing. And we see this younger guy, maybe an older teenager or early 20s guy, make his way up this hill that is like there's no path. He's just scrambling up through some undergrowth and stuff. And we think, you know what, he seems to know what he's doing. Like, we'll just follow him. So I'm scrambling up this hill with my suitcase in one hand, and the soil is really loose. And at one point I slipped, and the guys behind me, and one of them had already said something about like, "Oh, you're carrying a suitcase." And I was like, "Well, I came from London, then I'm going to Birmingham after this." And he said something to the effect of like, "Well, good on you," or like, like kudos to you for making it up this hill with a suitcase. So I slide down, I scrape up my arm, and he's like, "Do you want me to climb up before you and like take your suitcase?" And I was like, "I think I've got it," because I'm very bullheaded and independent. Um, and because I was almost to the top where I could see it flattened out. There was like a footpath. So I sort of like fling my suitcase so that it lands against the trunk of a baby tree, so it stops it from rolling back down the hill. And I can grab the trunk of this tree because it's small enough that I can put my hand around it, and kind of like use it to pull myself up this hill. And I scramble up, pull up my pants, they like falling down a little bit, grab my suitcase, and like walk up this footpath. And there's tons of people there, but I can see that there's a clearing in the trees where you can see the hill. It's far away. But I think if I can find a spot where I can safely kind of stand away and have an eye on my bag, um, with my camera zoom lens, I can see what happens. So that's what I did. I found a place by a tree so I could kind of lean my suitcase against it. And I also was sort of half leaning against it. And I used the zoom lens on my camera to get a better shot of the hill. And sure enough, you start hearing people chant cheese, 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 cheese right before noon when they're going to have their first race. And then suddenly you hear these crowds, and then you see this wheel of cheese go flying by. And then a few seconds later, you see bodies start tumbling down the hill. And, it wasn't the best viewing spot because I'm only seeing part of it. I think the best viewing spot would be obviously if you were right by the hill and no one was in front of you, or if you were at the bottom of the hill and no one was in front of you. But I think to do that, you would have to get there really, really early. But I saw it, right? I saw the cheese, I saw the people fall down, and then I wasn't able to film it the first race because my camera wigged out on me. So I stayed for a second race, was able to film that. So I had videographic proof to show my friends, like I really did. I went and I saw it. Um, and then by then I just thought, I don't need to stay for all 7 races. Like once you see one race of cheese and people falling down a hill, we've seen them all basically. So I left because I also wanted to see Gloucester Cathedral before I had took my train to Birmingham. So um I guess this is what I would advise for people who might be considering going and watching this at some point. If you live in the UK, or if you're thinking of visiting the UK around the time when this event is taking place, or thinking about participating yourself. Um I would say that I am a personality type that I want to see the thing for myself in person. And the wackier, weirder it is, the more I want to see it and experience it just once, right? It's like this compulsion. Like, no, I got to see it for myself. If you don't have that same compulsion, then I would recommend that you just watch videos online of the event. You're going to have a better view than if you go to the real thing, probably, unless you show up really early. If you are like me and you're someone who's like, no, I need to see it in real life, experience it for myself, then I would recommend trying to get there by like 9 in the morning, even though the race starts at noon. Because, um, like I said, I got there at like probably 11:30, 11:45, and there was no way. And I think if I had even 11 would have been still too late. And what I've read online, some people got there at 10 and still felt like it was like not optimal spots that they were getting. So maybe aim for 9 a.m. Also, be prepared to put in a big hike to get up that hill. Um, you're going to sweat, you're going to be out of breath. Don't bring a suitcase. Don't bring a suitcase with you. Just bring sturdy shoes, I did read someone else advised that you bring like wellies or some kind of boots because sometimes it can be muddy. Now, it wasn't muddy when I went. In fact, that was one of the things that the competitors talked about. The winner this year of the men's race was a German YouTuber, and he talked about the fact that the hill was really dry. Like a lot of times when they do this race, it's kind of muddy, but the fact that it was dry made it even more dangerous because it was, like harder and scratchier and stuff. Um, so you be prepared. It might be muddy, so you just make sure that you're wearing footwear that you can walk up a lot of hills with, and B, you're okay being on dirt. Because I mean, it's dirt. Like there's a second path, I guess, that comes from the other side that is largely paved, but it's not as scenic. Because I went up the path that's like a footpath. It's just you're walking on earth, on dirt. Um, and then I went back down the other way, which was mostly paved. That way isn't is like pretty. So I would recommend going the footpath way. You'll get some good views. There's saw some sheep grazing on the hill, so that was nice. Um, and then make sure you have water and maybe snacks depending on how long you're gonna be staying there. If you want to stay for the whole day, good on ya. But like I said, I feel like once you've seen one or two races, like okay, I've got the general idea. So that was that was my adventure in watching the cheese rolling. Now I can say that I've done it. I I would go again if I had a friend who wanted to go. And we agreed that we would maybe spend the night in Gloucester so we could get up early and get there early and get a good space. But if I didn't have a friend who wanted to go who had never seen it before, I don't think I would go a second time. Um, I feel like I've seen it. It's good. I can check it off my list. I do know that there are people who go every year. It's part of their thing. If you want to try and do it, that's up to you. I'm an adventurous person, and I actually want to go running with the bulls in Spain, but I would not do the Gloucester cheese rolling run because that is dangerous, right? Like running with the bulls, I feel like, I mean, okay. I trust my running abilities on flat surfaces enough to be okay running with the bulls. Um, but running down that hill, I think you are asking for like a serious head injury or bone breaking, and your prize is a wheel of cheese, which honestly you can buy. And actually, on that note, the people who make the cheese um, also sell cheese at the bottom of the hill, so you can buy your own Gloucester cheese um, to take home with you. And so I did. I bought myself a wedge of double Gloucester cheese from the people who make it for Cooper's Hill cheese rolling, and it was lovely. So that's all the information that you need to know if you're thinking about visiting or you're thinking about competing. In the meantime, I've got lots of videos planned for the future. I just got back from, like I said, the trip to Gloucester. I also then went on to Birmingham, so I might talk a little bit about Birmingham and Coventry in a future video. And I've got some other ideas coming up. But in the meantime, like, subscribe, tell your friends how gnarly this channel is, and I'll see you next time.